You were standing in the heart of Lisbon, where the first rays of dawn spill over the Tagus River and the city's 7 hills glow with the promise of a new day. The air is alive with the scent of orange blossoms and the distant peal of church bells as merchants unfurl their awnings and children dart through sunlit alleys. But today, the city's pulse is different. Today, every eye is fixed on the grand palace atop the hill, where history is about to be rewritten. Before we step through those palace gates, take a moment, hit that like button and subscribe if you love stories of courage and resilience. And tell us in the comments, what time is it, and where in the world are you watching from? I'm always amazed by how these stories connect us across continents and centuries. Now, let yourself be swept along with the crowd, nobles in silks, soldiers in gleaming armor, and commoners in their Sunday best, all drawn by a single, electrifying rumor. The Queen herself, Maria I of Portugal, is about to appear, not hidden behind velvet curtains, but in the open, before her people. The palace gates swing wide, and there she stands, regal, radiant, and unmistakably human. Her gown shimmers in the morning light, her crown glints like a promise, and her eyes clear, determined, and kind meet yours for a fleeting moment. Suddenly, a hush falls. The Queen, surrounded by her ladies and physicians, does something no monarch has dared before. She gives birth, not in secret, but in the presence of her court and her people. The moment is raw, vulnerable, and utterly extraordinary. In that instant, you realize you are witnessing not just the arrival of a royal heir, but the birth of a new era, one where courage is not hidden, where strength is found in honesty, and where a woman's pain becomes a nation's hope. But the story does not end with this miracle of life. As the bells ring out and the city erupts in celebration, you sense that this is only the beginning of a journey that will test the limits of human endurance and the power of hope. Maria's reign will be marked by storms, political upheaval, personal loss, and the relentless scrutiny of a world that is quick to judge and slow to understand. Yet, even as the shadows gather, there is something unbreakable in her spirit. You see it in the way she holds her newborn child, in the steady set of her jaw, in the quiet strength that radiates from her every gesture. She is not just a queen, she is a beacon, a living testament to the idea that true leadership is forged in the crucible of adversity. As the years pass, the world will watch Maria face challenges that would bring most to their knees. She will navigate the treacherous waters of court intrigue, the heartbreak of losing loved ones, and the weight of a crown that sometimes feels more like a burden than a blessing. There will be moments when her resolve is tested, when the pressures of rule threaten to overwhelm her, when whispers of madness begin to circulate through the marble halls of the palace. But through it all, Maria will refuse to surrender to despair. Instead, she will draw upon a wellspring of faith, resilience, and love for her people that will inspire generations to come. Imagine yourself in the crowd on that fateful morning, feeling the collective breath of a nation held in anticipation. You witnessed not just the spectacle of royalty, but the vulnerability of a woman who dares to lead with her heart. You see the hope in the eyes of those around you, the hope that this queen will be different, that she will guide Portugal through its darkest hours and into the light of a new dawn. And as you stand there, swept up in the tide of history, you can't help but wonder, what is the true measure of greatness? Is it found in the absence of struggle, or in the courage to rise above it? The real miracle, you sense, is still ahead. For Maria I's story is not one of defeat, but of resilience, of a woman who, even as the world doubted her, found ways to lead, to heal, and to inspire. As the sun climbs higher over Lisbon, you can't help but wonder, how does a queen who has shown such bravery in the face of tradition and expectation find herself later branded as mad? What storms must she weather? What burdens must she bear, to be remembered as both a mother of her people and a soul tested by the darkest shadows? If you're ready to discover the true power of hope, type "rise" in the comments below, because this is not just the story of a queen's breakdown, it's the story of how a nation found its strength in the light of her courage. And as the city awakens around you, you realize that sometimes the greatest heroes are those who refuse to let the darkness define them, who choose, again and again, to step into the light. The year is 1777. Europe is a continent in flux, its great capitals humming with the energy of revolution and reform. The Enlightenment is sweeping across the land, igniting minds from Paris to Vienna, from London to Lisbon. Philosophers debate, The rights of man, scientists unlock the secrets of the universe, and artists paint visions of a world transformed. But beneath the surface, old powers cling to their thrones, and the shadows of war and uncertainty stretch long across the cobblestones. In the far west, perched on the edge of the Atlantic, lies Portugal, a kingdom both ancient and ambitious, battered by storms and yet unbowed. Lisbon, its capital, is a city of contrasts, grand palaces and humble chapels, bustling markets and quiet cloisters, the scars of past disasters etched into every stone. Only a generation earlier, the city had been nearly destroyed by the great earthquake of 1755, a catastrophe so profound that it shook the faith of an entire nation. Fires raged, the sea rose up in a monstrous wave, and thousands perished. Yet from the ashes, Lisbon rebuilt its people, proving, time and again, that resilience is the true heart of Portugal. But the wounds of the past are not so easily healed. The royal family, the House of Braganza, has ruled for centuries, but its legacy is a tapestry woven with both glory and grief. The court is a place of dazzling ceremony and whispered intrigue, where alliances are forged and broken in the flicker of a candle. The Inquisition still casts its shadow, and the Church's power is felt in every corner of daily life. The nobility cling to privilege, while the common people labor in the vineyards and fields, dreaming of a better tomorrow. It is into this world turbulent, hopeful, and hungry for a change that Maria Francisca Isabel Josefa Antônia Gertrudes Rita Jonah de Bragança is born. The firstborn daughter of King Jose I, she is raised in a palace that is both sanctuary and stage, her every move watched by courtiers and chroniclers alike. From her earliest days, Maria is taught that her destiny is not her own. She is a princess, yes, but also a symboler, living promise that Portugal will endure, no matter what storms may come. Yet, as the Enlightenment's light grows brighter across Europe, Portugal finds itself at a crossroads. The old ways are crumbling, and the people yearn for a leader who can bridge the gap between tradition and progress. The kingdom's coffers are strained by war and rebuilding, and the threat of foreign invasion is never far from mind. Spain eyes the border with envy, while France and Britain play their endless game of alliances and betrayals. The world is changing, and Portugal must change with it or risk being left behind. In the midst of this uncertainty, the need for a hero becomes clear. Not a conqueror, but a unifier. Not a tyrant, but a shepherd. Someone who can heal the wounds of the past, inspire hope for the future, and remind the nation of its unbreakable spirit. The people look to the palace, searching for a sign that their faith is not misplaced. They whisper of Maria, the princess with the gentle eyes and the iron will, and wonder if she might be the one to lead them through the gathering storm. But the real miracle is still ahead, for Maria's journey will not be one of easy triumphs or untested virtue. She will face trials that would break lesser souls, betrayal, and the crushing weight of expectation. She will be called to make choices that will define not only her reign, but the very soul of her nation. And through it all, she will discover that true greatness is not found in the absence of fear, but in the courage to rise above it. As the sun sets over Lisbon, casting long shadows across the city's tiled rooftops, you can feel the tension. In the air, a sense that history is about to turn. The world is waiting for a hero. The world is waiting for Maria. And as the bells toll in the distance, you realize that sometimes the greatest stories begin not with a victory, but with a question: who will rise to meet the dawn? If you're feeling inspired by the resilience of Portugal and the promise of a new era, type "rise" in the comments. And remember, the real miracle was still ahead. Long before she was called the Mad Queen, Maria was simply a child, one whose earliest memories were shaped by the echo of church bells and the gentle hush of palace gardens. Born on December 17, 1734, in the ground halls of Ribeira Palace, Maria Francisca Isabel Josefa Antônia Gertrudes Rita Joana de Bragança entered the world as the firstborn daughter of King Jose I and Queen Mariana Victoria. Her birth was celebrated with fireworks and feasts, but for the infant princess, life began not with grandeur, but with the quiet, watchful love of her mother and the careful instruction of her tutors. From the very start, Maria was different. While other royal children delighted in games and pageantry, she was drawn to the world of books and music. Her governesses would often find her curled up in a sunlit window, lost in the pages of scripture or humming the melodies of sacred hymns. She learned to read and write at an early age. mastering not only Portuguese but also French and Latina, rare accomplishment for a girl of her time. Her letters, preserved in the royal archives, reveal a mind both curious and compassionate. In one, written at the age of 8, she confides to her mother, "I wish to be good, not only for myself, but for all who depend on me. If I am to be queen, let me be a queen who heals." But Maria's childhood was not without its shadows. The palace, for all its splendor, was a place of constant scrutiny and subtle rivalry. As the eldest daughter, she was expected to embody the virtues of her house: piety, humility, and obedience, while also preparing for the burdens of rule. Her father, King José, was a man of deep faith but fragile health, and the weight of his anxieties often fell upon Maria's young shoulders. She watched as her mother navigated the treacherous waters of court politics, learning early that kindness could be both a shield and a weapon. There were moments of loneliness, too. The expectations placed upon a royal child could be isolating, and Maria sometimes felt the sting of being different. She was not the boldest or the most beautiful of her siblings, but she possessed a quiet strength that set her apart. When a servant was unjustly dismissed, it was Maria who pleaded for mercy. When a younger sibling fell ill, it was Maria who sat by their bedside, reading prayers and offering comfort. Her compassion became her signature, and even the courtiers began to take notice. One story, often recounted in later years, tells of a day when a fire broke out in the palace kitchens. While others panicked, young Maria rushed to help the frightened staff, organizing a human chain to pass buckets of water and offering words of encouragement to those in distress. It was a small act, but it revealed a spirit unafraid to lead. In moments of crisis, a spark of the greatness that would one day define her reign. But the real miracle was still ahead, for even as Maria grew into adolescence, the world around her was changing. The Enlightenment was stirring new ideas, and the people of Portugal were yearning for a ruler who could bridge the gap between tradition and progress. Maria's early trials, her loneliness, her compassion, her quiet acts of courage, were not just the makings of a queen. They were the first notes in a symphony of resilience that would echo through the halls of history. As the sun set over the palace gardens, casting long shadows across the marble floors, Maria would often pause to reflect on her place in the world. In her diary, she once wrote, "To serve is to love, and to love is to endure." It was a lesson she would carry with her into the storms to come, a lesson that would shape not only her destiny, but the destiny of a nation. As Maria grew from a thoughtful child into a young woman, the world around her seemed to grow more complicated with every passing year. The palace was no longer just a place of learning and laughter, it was a crucible, where the fires of expectation and tradition tested the metal of every royal soul. For Maria, these were the years when her character was forged, not in the comfort of privilege, but in the heat of adversity. Her education was rigorous, guided by some of the finest minds in Portugal. The Jesuit fathers, renowned for their scholarship and discipline, became her earliest mentors. They taught her not only the classics Virgil, Cicero, and the Gospels, but also the art of reasoning, the value of self-discipline, and the importance of service. Maria's favorite tutor, Father Antonio Vieira, was a man of deep faith and even deeper compassion. He encouraged her to question, to seek understanding, and to use her gifts for the good of others. In his letters to the Queen he wrote, "Maria possesses a heart as vast as the ocean and a mind as sharp as the wind that shapes our shores. She is destined for more than ceremony, she is meant to lead." But Maria's lessons were not confined to the classroom. The court itself was a living school, full of intrigue and subtle power plays. She watched as her mother, Queen Mariana Victoria, navigated the shifting alliances and rivalries of the nobility with grace and wisdom. From her, Maria learned the delicate balance between firmness and kindness, between tradition and innovation. She saw how a single word, spoken at the right moment, could heal a rift or inspire loyalty. She also saw how easily trust could be broken and how quickly fortunes could change. It was during these formative years that Maria faced her first real trials, when her father, King José I, fell gravely ill after the Lisbon earthquake. The stability of the kingdom was thrown into doubt, the city was still rebuilding, and the people looked to the royal family for reassurance. Maria, though still young, stepped into the breach. She visited the wounded, comforted the grieving, and worked alongside the city's leaders to coordinate relief efforts. Her presence was a balm to a nation in pain, and her actions earned her the respect of both the court and the common people. One of her earliest victories came not in the halls of power, but in the quiet corners of the palace. When a group of orphaned children was brought to Lisbon after the earthquake, Maria took a personal interest in their welfare. She organized a charity drive, enlisting the help of her ladies-in-waiting, and even persuading her younger siblings to donate their allowances. The funds raised provided food, clothing, and shelter for dozens of children, and Maria's compassion became a beacon of hope in a time of darkness. In a letter to her confessor, she wrote, "To serve the least among us is to serve God Himself. If I am to wear a crown, let it be one of mercy." But the challenges did not end there. As Maria approached adulthood, the question of marriage loomed large. Suitors from across Europe vied for her hand, each alliance promising political advantage or economic gain. Yet Maria was determined to marry not just for duty, but for love and shared purpose. She found that in her uncle, Pedro, Príncipe of Brasil, match that, while unusual by modern standards, was common among European royals of the time. Their union was one of mutual respect and genuine affection, and together they would become a formidable team, united by faith and a shared vision for Portugal's future. Through these years, Maria's moral code was forged in the fires of adversity. She learned to stand firm in her convictions, even when it meant challenging the expectations of those around her. She refused to turn a blind eye to injustice, and she used her influence to champion the causes of the poor, the sick, and the marginalized. Her court became known as a place of learning and charity, where artists, scholars, and reformers found a welcome home. But the real miracle was still ahead. For all her early victories, Maria's greatest tests were yet to come. The world was changing, and the storms of revolution and war were gathering on the horizon. Yet, in the quiet strength of her youth, in the wisdom of her mentors, and in the compassion that guided her every action, Maria was already becoming the queen her nation would one day need, a queen whose legacy would be written not in gold, but in the hearts of her people. If you're feeling inspired by Maria's journey so far, type "rise" in the comments. And remember, the real miracle was still ahead. The year is 1777, and the air in Lisbon is thick with both anticipation and anxiety. The city, still bearing the scars of the great earthquake, is now the stage for a different kind of upheaval. King José, Maria's beloved father, lies gravely ill. The palace is hushed, its corridors echoing with the footsteps of anxious courtiers and the whispered prayers of a nation on the brink. Outside, the people wait, hoping, fearing, and wondering what the future will bring. It is in this crucible of uncertainty that Maria faces her greatest test yet. The death of her father is not just a personal loss, it is a national crisis. For the first time in centuries, Portugal stands on the threshold of a new era, and the weight of the crown is about to fall on Maria's shoulders. The court is divided. Some whisper that a woman cannot rule, that the kingdom needs a strong man to guide it through the storms ahead. Others, remembering Maria's compassion and strength, place their hopes in her hands. That's the king's life ebbs away. Maria is summoned to his bedside. The moment is intimate, yet monumental. Her father, once so strong and certain, now looks to her with eyes full of trust and love. In a voice frail but resolute, he entrusts her with the future of Portugal. "You are my heart, Maria," he whispers. "Lead them as you have led me, with faith, with courage, and with love." It is a blessing, a command, and a farewell all at once. The days that follow are a whirlwind of ceremony and sorrow. Maria is crowned Queen of Portugal in a solemn, awe-inspiring ritual. The cathedral is filled with the scent of incense and the sound of soaring choirs. As the crown is placed upon her head, Maria feels the full weight of her new responsibility. She is no longer just a daughter or a wife. She is the sovereign of a nation in need. But the challenges come swiftly. The court is rife with intrigue, and powerful factions vie for influence. The Marquis of Pombal, her father's formidable minister, has ruled with an iron fist for decades, reshaping Portugal in the aftermath of the earthquake. His reforms have brought stability, but also resentment. Many see him as a tyrant, and his enemies are eager to see him fall. Maria must decide, will she continue her father's policies, or will she chart a new course for her kingdom? It is here that Maria makes her pivotal choice. Guided by her conscience and her deep sense of justice, she decides to assert her authority. In one of her first acts as queen, she dismisses the Marquis of Pombal, signaling a new era of mercy and moderation. The decision is bold, even risky. Pombal's supporters warn of chaos, but Maria stands firm. She believes that true strength lies not in fear, but in compassion. In a letter to her confidant, she writes, "Let my reign be remembered not for the power I wield, but for the peace I bring." The impact is immediate. The court is stunned, the people are hopeful, and the world takes notice. Maria's choice is more than a political maneuver. It is a declaration of her values. She will not rule by terror or coercion, but by example. She opens the doors of the palace to petitioners, listens to the grievances of her subjects, and seeks counsel from a diverse array of advisors. Her reign is marked by a spirit of inclusion and reform, but the real miracle is still ahead. For even as Maria navigates the treacherous waters of power, she remains true to herself. She draws strength from her faith, her family, and her unwavering belief in the goodness of her people. The storms of revolution and war are gathering on the horizon, but Maria stands as a beacon of hope, a queen who dares to lead with her heart. As the sun sets over Lisbon, casting a golden glow across the city's rooftops, you can feel the tide of history turning. Maria's courage in the face of crisis has set the stage for a new chapter in Portugal's story. The world is watching, and the nation is ready to rise. If you're feeling inspired by Maria's pivotal choice, type "rise" in the comments. And remember, the real miracle was still ahead. The dawn of Maria's reign was not just a change of rulers, it was a change of spirit. As the first queen regnant in Portugal's history, Maria I stood as a living symbol of hope and renewal. Her coronation was more than a ceremony. It was a promise to her people that the darkness of the past would give way to a brighter, more compassionate future. The city of Lisbon, still healing from the scars of earthquake and tyranny, felt the first stirrings of optimism in years. Banners fluttered from every window, church bells rang in jubilant harmony, and the streets filled with the music of celebration. For the first time in a generation, the people dared to believe that their nation could rise again. Maria wasted no time in turning that hope into action. Her first months on the throne were marked by a flurry of reforms that touched every corner of Portuguese life. She opened the royal court to voices that had long been silenced: women, scholars, and commoners alike. She invited artists and musicians to fill the palace with beauty, believing that a nation's soul was nourished as much by art as by law. Under her guidance, Lisbon became a beacon of the Enlightenment, a place where ideas flourished and innovation was celebrated. One of Maria's most enduring achievements was her commitment to education. She expanded the University of Coimbra, founded new schools for girls, and established scholarships for the children of the poor. In a letter to her ministers, she wrote, "Let knowledge be the inheritance of every child, for in learning we find the seeds of greatness." Her vision was not just for the elite, but for all her people. She believed that a nation could only be strong if every citizen was given the chance to rise. Maria's compassion extended beyond the palace walls. She reformed the hospitals, improved care for the sick and the elderly, and championed the rights of the mentally ill long before such causes were fashionable. She visited the infirmaries herself, speaking with patients and listening to their stories. Her presence brought comfort and dignity to those who had been forgotten. In the words of one nurse, "The Queen's touch is a bomb. She brings light where there was only shadow." But Maria's greatest triumphs were not just in policy, but in the inspiration she gave to her people. She led by example, showing that true strength lies in kindness and humility. When famine struck the countryside, she organized relief efforts, and personally oversaw the distribution of food. When floods threatened the villages along the Tagus, she rode out to meet the victims, offering words of hope and practical aid. Her courage in the face of adversity became a rallying cry for the nation. The Queen's leadership was tested again and again as Europe was swept by the storms of revolution and war. The French Revolution sent shockwaves through every royal house, and Portugal was not immune to the tremors of change. Yet Maria remained steadfast, guiding her country through uncertainty with wisdom and grace. She strengthened alliances, modernized the army, and worked tirelessly to keep Portugal safe from the chaos that engulfed its neighbors. Maria's reign was also a time of spiritual renewal. A devout Catholic, she encouraged religious tolerance, and sought to heal the divisions that had long plagued her kingdom. She supported the Jesuits and other reformers, believing that faith and reason could walk hand in hand. Her court became a place where debate was welcomed, and where the search for truth was honored above all. but the real miracle was still ahead. For all her achievements, Maria's greatest gift to her people was the sense of possibility she inspired. She showed them that a nation could rise from the ashes, that compassion could be a force for change, and that even in the darkest times, hope could be rekindled. Her example lit a fire in the hearts of her subjects, and her legacy would echo through the generations. As the sun set over Lisbon, painting the city in hues of gold and rose, the people gathered in the squares to sing songs of praise for their queen. Children played beneath the banners, elders shared stories of the days when hope seemed lost, and all around there was a sense that Portugal was at last on the path to greatness. Maria I had not only claimed the crown, she had claimed the soul of her nation. For all the triumphs and celebrations, the life of a queen is never free from sorrow. As Maria I's reign blossomed, so too did the shadows that would test her heart and spirit. The burdens of the crown grew heavier with each passing year, and the cost of leadership became deeply personal. Yet, even as the storms gathered, Maria's resilience shone like a beacon, guiding her people and herself through the darkest nights. The first and deepest wound came with the loss of those she loved most. Maria's marriage to Pedro, Prince of Brazil, had been a rare union of affection and partnership in a world where royal marriages were often little more than political contracts. Together, they had built a family, sharing laughter, faith, and a vision for Portugal's future. But tragedy struck when Pedro fell ill and died unexpectedly in 1786, leaving Maria a widow and her children fatherless. The Queen's grief was profound, yet she refused to let it consume her. In her private diary, she wrote, "My heart is broken, but my duty remains. I must be both mother and monarch now, for my children and my people." The years that followed brought further trials. Maria's beloved eldest son, José, Prince of Brazil, was groomed from childhood to inherit the throne. He was her confidant, her hope for the future, and the living embodiment of her dreams for Portugal. But fate was cruel. In 1875, José died suddenly of smallpox at just 27 years old. The loss devastated Maria, and the nation mourned with her. Letters from the time described the Queen wandering the palace gardens in silent prayer, her face marked by sorrow but her posture unbowed. "She weeps for us all," one courtier observed, "and yet she stands taller than ever." As grief piled upon grief, Maria's health began to falter. The pressures of rule, the weight of expectation, and the relentless demands of court life took their toll. She suffered from insomnia, headaches, and bouts of melancholy. Whispers of madness began to circulate, but those closest to her saw not insanity, but a woman carrying more than anyone's soul should bear. Her faith became her anchor. She attended Mass daily, sought solace in music and prayer, and surrounded herself with trusted advisors who offered both counsel and compassion. Even in her darkest moments, Maria never abandoned her responsibilities. When famine struck the countryside, she ordered the royal kitchens to feed the hungry. When war threatened Portugal's borders, she rallied her ministers and generals, refusing to let fear dictate her decisions. She wrote letters to her surviving children, urging them to be strong, to serve with honor, and to remember that the crown is not a shield from pain, but a call to serve with love. Maria's resilience became a source of inspiration for her people. Stories spread of the Queen visiting hospitals in disguise, comforting the sick and the dying with gentle words and a steady hand. She was seen kneeling in prayer beside peasants, sharing their burdens and offering hope. Her compassion was not reserved for the privileged few, but extended to all who suffered. In the words of a Lisbon priest, "Her sorrow is our sorrow, but her courage is our salvation." But the real miracle was still ahead. For even as Maria faced the greatest losses of her life, she refused to let despair define her. She transformed her pain into purpose, her grief into grace. The Queen, who had once given birth in public, now gave birth to a new kind of leadership, one rooted in empathy, humility, and unwavering faith. Her example taught a nation that true strength is not the absence of suffering, but the ability to rise above it, again and again. As the years wore on, Maria's struggles became part of her legend. The people of Portugal saw in her not a madwoman, but a mother, one who bore the weight of a nation's hopes and sorrows with unbreakable dignity. Her sacrifices, though great, became the foundation of her legacy, and as the sun set over Lisbon, casting long shadows across the palace walls, Maria I stood as a testament to the power of resilience, the nobility of service, and the enduring light of hope. In the tapestry of Maria I's reign, there is one thread that gleams brighter than all the rest, a legacy-defining victory that would outlast the storms of her personal sorrow and the shifting tides of European politics. It was not a triumph won on the battlefield, nor a conquest of foreign lands, but a victory of the spirit, the founding of the Royal Academy of Sciences of Lisbon, and the transformation of Portugal into a beacon of enlightenment, compassion, and progress, at a time when much of Europe was convulsed by revolution and war. Maria dared to believe that the true strength of a nation lay not in its armies, but in the minds and hearts of its people. She envisioned a Portugal where knowledge was cherished, where innovation was encouraged, and where the light of learning could banish the shadows of ignorance and fear. With unwavering resolve, she gathered the greatest thinkers, scientists, and artists of her age, inviting them to her court and giving them the resources to dream boldly. The Royal Academy of Sciences, founded in 1779, became the crown jewel of Maria's vision. Its halls rang with the voices of scholars debating astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and the natural sciences. Under her patronage, new discoveries flourished, advances in agriculture that fed the hungry, breakthroughs in medicine that saved countless lives, and innovations in engineering that rebuilt Lisbon stronger and more beautiful than ever before. Maria's commitment to education was not limited to the elite. She expanded schools for girls, supported orphanages, and ensured that the doors of learning were open to all, regardless of birth or fortune. But Maria's reforms reached beyond the classroom. She championed the humane treatment of the mentally ill, founding the Rauhhoffels Hospital, one of the first institutions in Europe dedicated to compassionate psychiatric care. In an age when those who suffered from mental illness were often shunned or imprisoned, Maria's vision was revolutionary. She believed that every soul deserved dignity, and her policies set a new standard for kindness and understanding in medicine. Her compassion extended to the most vulnerable. When famine threatened the countryside, Maria mobilized the resources of the crown to provide food and relief. She reformed the legal system, reducing harsh punishments and promoting justice tempered with mercy. Her reign saw the flourishing of the arts, the construction of new churches and hospitals, and the strengthening of Portugal's spiritual and cultural identity. The impact of Maria's legacy was felt far beyond the palace walls. Her people, once battered by disaster and uncertainty, found new pride in their nation. The banners of Portugal soared above the city, symbols of a country reborn through the courage and vision of its queen. In the words of a contemporary poet, she gave us not only bread, but hope, not only laws, but light. But the real miracle was still ahead. For Maria's greatest achievement was not a single institution or reform, but the spirit she awakened in her people, the belief that, even in the face of adversity, they could rise, rebuild, and create a future worthy of their dreams. Her reign became a touchstone for generations, a reminder that true greatness is measured not by the absence of struggle, but by the ability to transform suffering into service, and pain into progress. As the sun set over Lisbon, casting a golden glow on the spires of the city she had helped to heal, Maria I's legacy shone brighter than ever. Her victories were not just her own, they belonged to every man, woman, and child who dared to hope, to learn, and to rise. As the years passed and the golden light of Maria I's reign mellowed into twilight, Portugal found itself guided by a queen whose wisdom had been forged in the fires of adversity. The storms of her earlier years' earthquakes, loss, and the relentless demands of rule had given way to a period of reflection, mentorship, and quiet, enduring influence. Maria, once the young princess with a heart full of hope, had become the matriarch of a nation, her presence a source of comfort and inspiration to all who sought her counsel. In her later years, Maria's role shifted from that of an active ruler to a revered mentor. She devoted herself to nurturing the next generation of leaders, both within her own family and throughout the kingdom. Her surviving son, João, would one day become King João VI, and Maria took great care to prepare him for the burdens and responsibilities of the crown. She shared with him the lessons she had learned about compassion, justice, and the importance of listening to the people. In their private conversations, she reminded him that a true sovereign serves first and rules second, a principle that would guide João through the turbulent years ahead. Maria's influence extended far beyond the royal family. She welcomed young scholars, artists, and reformers to her court, encouraging them to pursue their dreams and to use their talents for the good of Portugal. Her patronage of the arts and sciences continued, and the Royal Academy of Sciences flourished. Under her watchful eye, she took particular interest in the education of women, supporting schools and scholarships that opened new doors for girls across the country. In a letter to a headmistress, she wrote, "Let every girl know that her mind is a treasure and her heart a compass. The future of our nation depends on the dreams we nurture today." Even as her health declined, Maria remained a symbol of hope and resilience. She spent her days in the gardens of the palace, surrounded by the flowers she loved and the music that had always brought her solace. She continued to visit hospitals and orphanages, often in disguise, bringing comfort to the sick and the lonely. Her faith, which had sustained her through so many trials, became even deeper in her final years. She attended Mass daily, prayed for her people, and found peace in the knowledge that she had done her utmost to serve her nation with love and integrity. The people of Portugal never forgot the Queen who had led them through darkness into light. As Maria's reign drew to a close, communities across the country found ways to honor her legacy. Churches held special services in her name, poets composed verses celebrating her compassion, and artists painted her portrait as a symbol of maternal strength and wisdom. The Royal Academy of Sciences established a scholarship in her honor, ensuring that her commitment to knowledge and progress would live on for generations. When Maria I passed away in 1816, the nation mourned as one. Bells tolled in every village and city, and thousands gathered in Lisbon to pay their respects. Her funeral was a testament to the love and gratitude of her people, a procession of light and music, of prayers and remembrance. In the words of a contemporary chronicler, she was not only our queen, but our mother. She taught us to hope, to endure, and to rise. But the real miracle was still ahead. For Maria's influence did not end with her death. Her ideals of compassion, service, and the transformative power of hope became woven into the very fabric of Portuguese society. Her son, King João VI, carried forward her legacy, guiding the nation through the challenges of the Napoleonic Wars and the transition to a new era. The institutions Maria had founded, schools, hospitals, and academies, continued to flourish, shaping the minds and hearts of future generations. Today, Maria I is remembered not as a queen who broke under the weight of sorrow, but as a sovereign who transformed suffering into strength. Her story is told in classrooms and cathedrals, in songs and stories passed down from parent to child. Statues and memorials across Portugal bear her likeness, a reminder that true greatness is found not in the absence of hardship, but in the courage to rise above it. As the sun sets over Lisbon, casting a gentle glow on the city she loved, Maria's spirit endures in every act of kindness, in every dream pursued, in every heart that chooses hope over despair. Her peaceful sunset was not an end, but a beginning, a legacy of light that continues to guide Portugal and all who seek inspiration in the story of a queen who dared to lead with love. What does it mean to lead with love, to serve with courage, to rise again and again in the face of heartbreak? The story of Maria I of Portugal is more than a royal biography, is a living testament to the power of hope, resilience, and the quiet heroism that shapes the world from within. Maria's life was not defined by the titles she wore or the palaces she inhabited, but by the choices she made when the world seemed darkest. She showed us that true greatness is not the absence of pain, but the ability to transform suffering into compassion and loss into purpose. In her, we see a leader who did not hide her humanity, but embraced it, who wept openly, who prayed for her people, who walked among the sick and the poor, and who believed that every act of kindness could change the course of a nation. Her reign reminds us that leadership is not about perfection, but about perseverance. Maria faced storms that would have broken lesser souls, earthquakes, famine, war, and the loss of those she loved most. She was called mad by some, but her so-called madness was, in truth, a heart too large for the narrow confines of her age. She taught us that vulnerability is not weakness, but strength, that to serve is to love, and to love is to endure. In our own time, we are faced with challenges that can feel overwhelming: uncertainty, division, and the weight of expectations. But Maria's story calls us to remember that every dawn is a chance to begin again, that every act of service is a step toward healing, and that hope is the most powerful force we possess. Her legacy lives on in every school that opens its doors, every hospital that offers comfort, every community that chooses compassion over fear. So as you reflect on the journey of Maria, I ask yourself, how can I lead with love? How can I turn my own struggles into strength for others? How can I rise, even when the world expects me to fall? If you're feeling inspired by Maria's story, by her courage, her faith, and her unbreakable spirit, type rise in the comments below. Let's honor her memory not just with words, but with action. Let's choose hope, let's serve with kindness, and let's remember that the real miracle is always ahead, waiting for those who dare to believe. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you found Maria's story uplifting, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of resilience and heroism from history's brightest hearts. Until next time, keep your banners high, your spirit unbreakable, and your hope shining like the dawn.